Cool, and then I'm going to spotlight my video. Pin. There we go. Okay, so you're definitely 100% going to need your blocks today. So we're actually going to do something called gravity yoga. So come to lie on your back. We'll start in Supta Baddha Konasana. So this is where the soles of the feet come together, the knee is open nice and wide. And I will explain what gravity yoga is once we're in this position. So let your hands rest on your belly. So gravity yoga is something that I've fallen in love with, and I love it because you can be an advanced yoga practitioner or you can be completely new and practice this. The point of gravity yoga really is to develop your ROM, so your range of mobility or flexibility. It is essentially using gravity, clue in the name, to create space in the body. And I'll talk about the different components of it as we go. I think the most important thing, so you can start to prepare yourself, is that we're going to be holding poses for 3 to 5 minutes, okay, which can be intimidating and a little bit scary and oh my God, what am I going to do for that much time? And a lot of people struggle less physically and more mentally in the poses. And this is because you're being asked to be still in a slightly uncomfortable position where you're stretching into the body. And the mind is going to be shouting at you, move, 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 get out of the pose. But actually your body is so much stronger than your mind, really. It's our mind always that kicks us out before the body. And also it's really important to remember that your hips are really strong. Okay, so talked about all of that stuff. You know, you've got our hips are a very deep ball and socket joint. It's very unlikely that in any of the poses today you're going to pop your hip out of place. Maybe if you were in your 80s and you had brittle bones already and maybe osteoporosis, there might be a risk of that. But as far as I'm aware, that is not the case with anyone in the course. So just know that this stuff is coming, but also know that you can use as many props as you want. Okay, if you have bolsters, blocks, pillows, cushions, you do not need to go into the most extreme version of the pose. I would actually recommend that you come into these poses today less extreme, so less intense, and see how you get on. Because as you hold something that maybe doesn't feel very intense at the beginning, after 2 minutes, 3 minutes or more is going to start to feel a lot more intense. Good. So start to shuffle your feet so your soles of your feet start to come onto the mat and just windshield wipe your knees. Okay, so that was kind of our first hold. That was a hip opener, Supta Baddha Konasana. It's reclined butterfly. We'll come into a seated butterfly later. Between the holds, between the poses, we're going to do a little bit of movement. Good. And then from here, you're just going to bring yourself up and all the way into tabletop. So whatever way feels easiest for you to get there. Hands onto the mat, feet, or knees rather, underneath the hips. And then just start to take a couple cat-cows just to warm up the spine, get a little bit of movement happening before we come into our first hold. So what we're going to come into first is pigeon pose. So depends on which variation of pigeon works for you. If pigeon with the knee behind the wrist and the other leg extended is fine, then come into this. So I'm going to show this variation and then I'll show the other variation for anyone watching on the replay. Now, in this version of pigeon, I want you to possibly prop yourself up because this is going to be a 5-minute hold. This is our first big hold. Option 1, okay, you have your right knee behind your right wrist and the toes are shuffling towards the left, and then your left toe is untucked and the leg is straight. You can take a block and prop it under your right butt cheek. As you come down, you can also take another block underneath the head, okay? And you might not even bring the head down. You might stay like this. Try to even the weight between the hips. And then just start to surrender down. So if you're in that variation of pigeon, perfect. Stay there Anyone who found that version of pigeon difficult, you're going to come onto your back, taking your right foot onto your left knee, either just pushing that knee away, or if it feels comfortable, lifting that left foot off the floor and holding the back of the thigh. Good. So remembering the positions of our hips. So front leg, your right leg is in what's called flexion and external rotation. So flexion and external rotation. I'm just going to get my timer ready. Don't worry, I'm not going to start the time from 0. And then your back leg, if you're in the pigeon where your belly's coming to the floor, that is an extension. And if you're in the version of pigeon where you're on your back, that leg is just in flexion. So you're 2 minutes in already, which is the good news. I want you to bring your awareness to your left foot. And just start to soften and let go of any tension you're holding in that left foot. And then move that awareness up the left leg into the calf muscle and the knee. And then softening the muscles in the left thigh, into the left glute, and then into that left hip. Moving along the left hip to the right hip. And this is where you're going to probably feel most of the tension. See if you can soften in the right glute, the right hip, along the right thigh, into the right knee, into the calf muscle and the shin, and into that foot, the top of the foot, the sole of the foot. The whole lower half of the body nice and soft and released. So letting gravity do the work here. You're still, you're trying not to fire muscles. It's very common in pigeon for people to tighten up the shoulders and push into the hands and squeeze the face. So if you can, release in those parts of the body as well. We have 1 minute left. I'm going to call out the minute mark. So if you feel uncomfortable, if you feel like you can't do it anymore, you can always come out. Okay? You don't have to stay in these poses. You've got less than a minute now. What you're going to find when we move out of the poses is that you're going to feel like the Tin Man, which is going to be confusing because I've just told you that this style of yoga helps us with flexibility. But in the immediate, so directly after coming out of the pose, you are going to feel super stiff. Okay? And you're going to experience this in about 20 seconds. So when we come out of the poses, you're going to move slowly. Okay? Not rushing out. You won't be able to rush out because you will feel really, really stiff. Okay, so we've made it to 5 minutes. Start to push onto the hands, really nice and slow. And then what you're going to do is just tip onto your right butt cheek. Okay, so the right butt cheek is going to catch you. And then what you're going to do is come into deer pose. So I'm just spinning around so you can see me. So your front leg is forwards and the shin is parallel to the front of the mat. And then your back leg, the shin is going along the side of the mat. If this is very uncomfortable, you can take a block underneath your right butt cheek. Okay, so that's an option. This isn't going to be a long hold. This is called deer pose. You're just going to fold over that front leg. You might barely fold. Okay, it might look like this, or you might be able to come quite far down. And you're just going to let the head be heavy. So we're only going to stay here for about 30 to 40 seconds. So you've got internal rotation happening in the left leg, and you've got external rotation happening in the right leg. So two different things going on. Good. And then lifting up the head. From here with your bum on the floor, just windshield wipe the knees. Okay, so just getting that movement going. So from side to side, windshield wiping those knees. Whew. Perfect. Okay, so we're going to get ready to do it on the other side. So just like we did before, you're going to bring yourself into tabletop. Okay, move slowly. And then you're going to take your left knee behind your left wrist, toes sweep over to the right, tuck that right toe, slide the toes back, drop the knee and untuck the toe. Then from here, maybe a block goes underneath the left butt cheek. Maybe you drop down, head on the floor. That's if you were doing that version of pigeon. If you're doing the other version, right foot on the floor, left foot comes over the knee. You can push that knee away, or you can lift the foot, either holding a strap or the back of that leg. Good. So if you're on the version of pigeon where you're on your belly, even the weight between the two hips, slow the breath down. So this tightness, this Tin Man kind of feeling like you can barely move after a pose, this should only last maybe 30 seconds, maybe 60 seconds. It should kind of disappear quite quickly. If for any reason that weird Tin Man feeling doesn't go away, this generally just means that you came in too quick and too intense. It should really start to disappear quite quickly. So there are a few rules or components of gravity yoga, and one of the first one is called time under passive tension, okay? So time, I'm timing you, that's essentially what this means. Our body will always kick us out of a pose before we meet or beat our hold time, okay? So before we meet or beat our hold time. And because of this, we kind of stay in this state of inertia. So inertia means kind of unchanging, staying the exact same. And we never really move past that. What's amazing about being a beginner yogi is that you have so many beginner gains. Okay? You're going from nothing to then starting to move your body. So at the beginning, you're going to feel lots and lots of gains. You're going to feel great. But then you'll hit a plateau. And this is because most yoga teachers aren't timing their poses. In a regular class, I never time my poses. It's just not feasible. And they're kind of all held for the same amount of time. And then even when you're doing your own practice, you probably won't be timing your poses, and you'll really struggle to meet, so get to the same amount of time or beat that whole time. And obviously we want to beat the whole time to build more flexibility and mobility. In saying that, we never go beyond 5 minutes, okay? So you're not trying to get to like a 20-minute hold. Studies have shown that after 5 minutes, there is diminishing returns. So you're not seeing a real change. It's kind of the same. And to be fair, it's just really boring. So we don't want to do that. And also we don't want to stress out the joints, okay? So holding your knee in the position that it is right now in pigeon, if you did that for 20 minutes, that's a lot of torque in that joint for a long period of time. And that's just not going to be really beneficial. So you're at the 3-minute mark now, which is good news. You've got 2 minutes left. So time, we understand that now. Passive tension. So passive means that we are softening and completely letting go. So we're actually not working on having that straight spine. So I've been telling you since day dot that we want to be opening up the shoulders, we want to be straightening the spine. In gravity yoga, we're not doing this, okay? And there's a reason for that. I'll explain that as we go. But let go of all alignment things in gravity yoga. Alignment really doesn't matter. So we only let go of alignment when the teacher says, or in gravity yoga. So you've got 60 seconds left. If for any reason you need to come out of the pose now, go for it. Otherwise, stay. Breathing deeply. I will try to chitter chatter to you the whole time to help pass time, but it's also important to just be with yourself. So last 30 seconds here. Again, being mindful, slowly start to bring yourself up, okay? If you're on your back, bring yourself onto your bum. If you're in pigeon, bring yourself onto your hands. And then everybody tip onto your left butt cheek. You're gonna slide your left shin so it's in line with the front of the mat, right shin so it's in line with the side of the mat. Turn your torso so it's square over your left shin and then start to come forwards. If this position on its own is really difficult, take a block underneath your left butt cheek. This will make it easier. You might just be sitting upright. It might feel okay to come forwards. So again, those legs are doing opposite things. Right leg is in internal rotation. Left leg is in external rotation. What's nice about gravity yoga as well is that you're in these poses long enough to kind of explore how it feels, explore kind of gently moving the body around to change the sensation. Good. Slowly start to bring yourself up. Good. And then again, feet on the floor, little windshield wipe. Windshield wipes are great to just get that blood flowing. Part of the pins and needles and part of the Tin Man is just when the blood supply is kind of blocked slightly. I'm not saying that your foot is going to fall off because there's no blood flow, but when we're in certain positions, especially if, you know, a joint's really, really tight, the blood just has a bit of a harder time getting there. It's not dangerous. That's just going to explain part of the reason why you feel the way you feel. Okay, so we are going to come into butterfly pose. Now, how I normally explain butterfly pose is you're trying to get those heels as close towards the pubic bone as you can. I want you to back off slightly. So maybe 2 or 3 fists away from the crotch is where I want your heels. Also, if you feel like you're really rolling back, just take that trusty block underneath the bum. Okay, that's totally fine. Now, normally when I teach this pose, I say nice and tall, straight spine, shoulders back. We're going to release all of that, and you're just going to flop. Now, depending on the mobility of the spine and the tightness of the hips, this is going to affect how far you flop. So you might be like, what? I'm barely moving. If that's you, that's cool. If you have more mobility, you'll be able to come really far forwards. Now, if you are very mobile, okay, perhaps you don't need a block under the bum. You could take a block onto the feet and let your head drop onto that block. You could have 2 blocks here. So if you're very tight, okay, stack your blocks up and let your head drop. In gravity yoga, we can use these props to hold different limbs to make it slightly easier. So you've been in this pose now for a minute. That's the good news. You got 4 left. What you might notice is when you first come into this pose, you don't feel much. But at about the 2-minute mark, you're going to really start to feel stuff. I feel this a lot in my lower back and on the very kind of outer edges of my hips. I will continue to call out the minute marks. So if you need to move or come out of the pose, you can. So let's chat about another rule of gravity yoga, and this is the breath, okay? So in gravity yoga, we are elongating our exhale. So the rule, or what we're trying to get to, is an inhale for the count of 4, and then an exhale out of the mouth for the count of 7. Now, if that's not possible, you can do 3-6, okay? But essentially, you're trying to elongate the exhale. And this directly links to what's called your sympathetic or your nervous system. We're at the 2-minute mark now. So your nervous system, you've got 2 main nervous systems. You've got sympathetic, which is your fight or flight, and you've got parasympathetic, which is your rest, your relax, your digest. If the sympathetic nervous system is working, your body thinks that you're in a bit of danger, or maybe that you need to be really aware. If you're in danger, your muscles will not relax. They're going to stay tense because they're ready to fire, they're ready to move, they're ready to fight. The breathing patterns with stress or anxiety, or when you really need to be switched on, are generally faster breaths, okay? So the breath links to the mind. We're at 3 minutes now. I'm really longing out this explanation. So if the breathing is fast, the mind will then be convinced that you're in the sympathetic. So it will think, okay, we need to tighten our muscles. We need to be ready to take action. Where when we're in the rest, relax, digest, our breathing is slower, okay? And if we're in a state of relaxation, if we're sitting on the beach, if we're in bed, you know, if we're totally zen, our muscles relax because they don't need to be ready to jump up right away. They don't need to be ready to perform. And when we're relaxed, when we're chilling, our breathing is slower. So we want to use the breath to convince the mind that we're relaxed. We're at 4 minutes now, you've got 1 minute left. So your body in these poses is not gonna go like, oh, this is great, let's relax, let's hang out. Your body's gonna be saying, well, what the hell are you doing? Why are we still here? This is not where I wanna be. But we're gonna use the breath to convince the body that we're okay. And therefore we tell what is called the muscle spindles, these are your stretch reflexes, to let go. So you're basically manipulating the body with the breath. Okay, so you've got 30 seconds left. Breathe in for 4, 3, 2, 1. Breathe out, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. In 4, 3, 2, 1. Out, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Good. From here, very, very, very slowly, start to stack like Lego the spine. So starting from the lumbar spine, working your way up. Ooh. Vertebrae by vertebrae. Oh, good. Until you bring the head all the way up. Hands are going to come to the outside edges of the knees just to bring them together. Oi, good. Feet onto the floor. Hands behind you. And we're just going to do 5 lifts and lowers into reverse tabletop. Doesn't have to be really high. So just lift the bum, squeeze, and lower back down. Don't worry how high you go. This is just to get the muscles working, the blood flowing. 3 more. Good news is that the next pose we're only holding for 3 minutes. So it'll fly by in comparison to the last 2. Good, nice. Alrighty, so get your blocks ready at the top of your mat on their highest setting. Okay, we're gonna come into lizard. So you might remember lizard from Tuesday and from the posture tutorials. So coming into tabletop with the hands on the blocks. And then we're gonna do our right foot first. So right foot is gonna step to the outside of that block. Don't worry if you can't get the foot all the way there. Now, watch what happens to my front knee. As I sink forwards, look how far my right knee is overshooting my ankle. Remember, we don't wanna stress out that front knee joint. So I'm going to shimmy, shimmy, shimmy my foot forwards until my ankle is just a touch forwards. Now here, my shoulders are overshooting my wrists. So I'm gonna walk my blocks forwards. Sinking into lizard. Okay, so this is 3 minutes. Okay, done about 30 seconds already, which is the good news. Front leg is in deep flexion and slight external rotation. Back leg is in extension. Now from here, you can keep the head up or you can let the head drop. And those who are more flexible, you can bring the blocks down or come onto your forearms. You want to be sinking those hips down. Okay, sinking, sinking, sinking those hips down. Find that 4-7 breathing. Now you don't need to be very strict with that front knee. It can flop out slightly. So just let it kind of find a place that works for it. You're now halfway there. Okay, halfway mark. Told you it was going to go by quicker. Also, when we do 4-7 breathing, it's about 6 breaths to get you to a minute, which is quite nice because that doesn't feel like a lot. So we've got a minute left. I want you to do 6 of those 4-7 breaths if you can. Thirty seconds left, you're almost there. I always feel it's a lot in my back leg as well. Good, okay, from here, slowly shift that weight back. And when you feel ready, okay, you might shuffle, shuffle, shuffle. You're gonna bring that knee down and you're just gonna sit back into a child's pose. Hands might stay on the block, so you're getting a shoulder stretch, or you might bring them down onto the mat, but you're just bringing that back leg into flexion to let it have a little break. And then we're gonna go straight to the other side. So hands back onto those blocks. When you're ready, that left foot is gonna start to step forwards. Again, don't worry if the foot only comes this far. Help the foot forwards, sink into the hips, and then just wiggle the toes. So you're trying to get that left ankle slightly in front of the knee, and then start to sink those hips forwards. Again, make sure that your blocks are under the shoulders, so they're not too far forwards, not too far back. Just directly under. We don't want to stress the shoulders. Remember, we're targeting the hips. Good, okay, so settling, releasing, head heavy. Maybe you come onto the forearms, maybe you stay on the hands, maybe the hands come onto the floor. One of the other principles of gravity yoga is called wet noodle. And this is just totally softening everything and releasing. And so the reason for this is that actually we're not targeting our muscle tissue in gravity yoga. So when I tell you to have a really straight spine and to engage all the muscles, this is because I'm trying to lengthen your quads, your hamstrings, your psoas, all of these muscles. But in gravity yoga, we're actually targeting connective tissue. Okay, so it's slightly different. Connective tissue is fascia. If you've not heard of fascia, imagine a web of white tissue that wraps around the entire body, holds all the muscles and the ligaments and everything in. And then the rest of your connective tissue is just that. It's your ligaments and your tendons. Now these are white tissues. Okay, they're not very vasculated. Vasculated means that there's a lot of blood flow. So your muscles are red, they're pink, they've got loads of blood flow. If you injure a muscle, they can repair themselves really easily. Your connective tissue doesn't have a lot of blood flow. So if you injure your connective tissue, it's not really going to heal itself. It's kind of screwed. Okay, so we don't want to be pushing too much into these poses, but we also don't want to never be stressing these tissues. And it sounds counterintuitive, just to let you know you've got a minute left. Sounds counterintuitive that I'm telling you that we want to stress these areas. This is because we want to strengthen them. Okay, so I'm not a runner. If I went and did a 10K run today, I would be broken for probably a week. Okay, I'd be suffering with so much kind of soreness and muscle pain. But if I did a little bit of running every single day, then eventually over time, going for a 10K run wouldn't bother me. And this is essentially what we're trying to do. So we're adding a little bit of tension, a little bit of stress, last 30 seconds, to these tendons, to these joints, to strengthen them. Okay, if you never use a car and you go to use it, okay, it's going to be rusted, it's going to maybe not even start. This is the same thing with your body. If you're not stressing out your body, and I know sometimes, oh, I don't want to do that because it makes me a little bit sore here, a little bit sore there. If you never do that again, slowly start to push yourself back into that child's pose. If you do something and it causes you a little bit of soreness and then you never do it again, you're never going to get stronger at it. There is always going to be an element of being slightly uncomfortable and slightly sore with anything new that you do. That's just the way it is. There's no way of getting around that. Change isn't easy. Progress isn't easy. It's going to require a little bit of uncomfortable feelings, a little bit of pain. But over time, it'll get easier. And you'll also get stronger. Good, nice. Pulling yourself up. Whee! All right, we have one pose left, which is our squat pose. This is going to be a 3-minute hold. I'm not going to make you hold squat for 5 minutes. Now, if you could do that squat with without the wall, I want you to start to roll up your mat, okay? This is what you're going to put your ankles on. So rolling up your mat, and then standing the heels onto that mat. Toes out, start to sink back. If you need a block under your bum, take the block. Now, if that squat, okay, if you were doing this kind of stuff, lowering, don't worry about that. I want you to step to a wall, back against the wall, toes out on an angle, and just find your squat. Okay, so we are starting the time now. Either using that wall, okay, go to a point where you think you can hold for 3 minutes. If you're all the way down here and within like 30 seconds you're killing yourself, don't go that low. If you're on the mat, that's fine. You also might be fine without the mat, okay? If you are very flexible, you might be able to just sink into that squat, but you might want to have a block under the bum. Now in this squat, remember what I was teaching you before? I said we want to be up nice and tall. Gravity yoga is the opposite of this. So if you're down, okay, either sitting on the block, not against the wall, on the wall just be normal. But if you're in squat, just let the head drop, let the back round, and settle. If the heels are lifting off of the floor, guys, you need to step your feet further apart from each other. Okay, so if that's happening, feet further apart. Okay. So either squatting like I am or using the wall. The wall will just give you that support so that you can work on strengthening the quads, the ankles. You're halfway there, okay? So you just have to do that time again. A minute and a half, so find that breathing. Why is squat pose important? Well, obviously we're opening the hips. They're going into external rotation and flexion, but also we're developing ankle mobility. The ankle mobility and hip mobility, they are one. Okay? If we have a lack of mobility in the ankles, this is going to directly affect the hips. So squat pose is requiring a lot from our ankles, and most people will come out of a squat pose not because of their hips, but because of their ankles. Okay, there's a lot of mobility required here. You're in deep flexion of those ankles. the lower you go, the more those ankles are having to go and lift. Okay. You are entering your last 30 seconds. You did your longest holds at the beginning, so these should all feel a little bit nicer, a little bit quicker. So just to review really quickly, gravity yoga, time under passive tension. Meet or beat your hold time. Wet noodle, we're just flopping into these poses to target the connective tissue. And then that 4-7 breathing to stimulate that sympathetic nervous system. Nice, okay. Slowly moving out of that squat. So if you're on the wall, slowly start to come off the wall. If you're in this pose, hands behind you, move the block from underneath the bum, bring yourself down onto the mat, take your feet forwards and just butterfly the knees, okay? So some of you are gonna have to bring yourself onto the mat and just butterfly the knees, or if it feels better, do those windshield wipes. Really nice way to just release some of that tension in the hips. Good. We're gonna finish in a little seated meditation. So grab a bolster, a block, 2 blocks, whatever you need to make this a little bit more comfortable. You can also sit against a wall. So if sitting on the floor is really challenging, remember, gravity yoga, you might feel like it's slightly easier after that class we've just done. So hands turned face up, slightly tuck the chin and close the eyes. Let your belly go. And I want you to just reflect to the last time that you came to sit cross-legged. And just notice if somewhere in the body feels a little bit more open, or like there's a little bit more space, a little bit less tension. And we often get a lot of lower back kind of screaming at us in a seated pose. Remember, this posture is called Sukhasana, easy pose. So we're aiming to get it to feel easier. Not for me, really. For so many of the people I teach, is the goal is Sukhasana. The goal is to get you to sit comfortably. It's not to get you into a scorpion pose or a headstand. It's to get you feeling more comfortable, more easy in your body. So you're just going to take 10 breaths here. Every time you inhale, I want you to inhale positivity, gratitude, this idea of change, hard work, tenacity. Every time you exhale, I want you to let go of negativity. I can't do this, I can't do that. My body's not able to do this. Okay? So much of your yoga practice is your mindset. So much of your life is your mindset. Remember, we're taking what we learn on the mat and trying to implement this into our life. Just 5 more breaths like this. On your next inhale, you're going to bring your hands high above your head. Palms come to touch, dropping the thumbs to the space between the brow for kindness in your thoughts, to the lips for kindness in your words, and then letting the thumbs rest at heart center. You to carry kindness, compassion, and action through the rest of your day. Opening the eyes. Well done. Namaste.